Scruffy Audio Network.
You love hearing yourself talk, yeah.
It's an important person to hear.
Yeah, for yourself, I agree with that.
Okay. So today we are talking about our nation's capital.
Yes, sir, Washington D.C.
So let's get right into it. Let's talk a little bit in D.C. about getting around.
Yeah, so I've not done anything other than drive in D.C. Every time I've been to D.C.
You haven't walked through D.C.
I have.
One of the most walkable cities in this
as you
country.
love to say, shoe-leathered it, which I'm still not even sure what that means.
Well,
but yes.
you know, you have shoes, and on the bottom of those shoes is leather, unless they're sneakers or tennis shoes.
Which is what
or
normal
whatever.
people wear, yes, tennis shoes, yeah.
Okay. I bet there's a lot of shoe leather in D.C. I bet there's a lot of folks that are just walking around in dress shoes, like I'm in right now.
Yeah.
And actually like you're in right now, so calm down. But it's a walkable city. I've driven through D.C. also. You can cab, Uber, all that kind of stuff.
You took the metro one time, right? Or no?
Nah. Oh, I can't remember if we did or not.
God, you're so old. You can't remember anything.
I
remember
really,
you told me you did.
Okay, then I probably did. I probably did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's just say that I did, and I just don't remember it. You catch it in Union Station? Is that? Did they have to stop there?
Sounds good.
I've caught a train from Union Station to D.C. to Baltimore before.
Oh, okay.
So we've done that. At least I think I have.
Yeah.
My wife will probably listen to this and
I've
say,
done Uber too, by the way.
In D.C.?
It's great in D.C.
Yeah. Why?
Because everywhere is. It's a pretty compact area. Everywhere that you want to go is pretty short. So if you don't want to walk it, which it's very easy to walk, but if you don't want to walk it, then you can easily Uber for just a few minutes, short cheap, distance, and very cheap.
Yeah, and also Washington D.C. is the first place that my wife and I did a hop-on, hop-off bus, which was several years ago. But we've talked before about the hop-on, hop-off. I love that because it's basically you pay one price. It's like $12 or $20 or something, and I mean that's a big range, but
or $50 or
it's some price,
$8,
individual price each, and then for 24 or 48 hours or 36 hours or something, just some hour time frame, you have all the access you want to this hop-on bus, and it has different spots. We caught it at Union Station, went all the way around. All of the major points in D.C., which is kind of cool because then you can see, hey, here's where I want to come back and look at later. And sometimes you're just going to ride by some spots and say, oh, yeah, well, that was cool, but I don't need to waste time going there. Not that you would be wasting time, but there are places that you're not, if you're there for a limited time, you're not necessarily going to see. Yeah. And we did it.
So what do you want
night.
to see?
Well, I think some of the must-sees, as I see that you skipped right over my thing that says architecture.
Yeah, I tried to. Yeah. I tried to. Did it work?
No, because that's part of the intro. You got to talk about the architecture in D.C. And we've talked a lot about other cities. We got a podcast coming up talking about Athens. We talked about Paris before, and we talk about the architecture in all those great cities. But D.C. is modeled. That architecture is modeled after the great cities in Europe. And I think it's worth it to make sure that as you're walking around, you're obviously going to see it, but to make sure that you're just taking a minute to take it all in, all of these great buildings that are there.
Did you just tell me that our nation's capital was modeled after Europe?
Yeah, all the buildings were. The buildings
that seems shady.
The buildings are modeled after the great architecture in Europe.
Okay.
Yes, that's a fact. It's a fact because I just said it. It makes it a fact. So let's talk about the
Troy's an idiot. I just said it. It's a fact. Okay, must-sees. When you talk about D.C., you might as well go ahead and start it off with the White House. So you can take a tour of the White House. You can talk about Capitol Hill. When I was in elementary school, we took a tour of Capitol Hill, so that was pretty cool. I don't know that they had anything going on at the time, but it's still neat to be able to go inside and see the building, kind of see some of the stuff that you see on TV. But those are two. I
agree. Those are two of mine. We did not get either time that we've been to any of the times we've been to D.C. We did not get into either the White House or into the Capitol building, but we did walk around. Actually, one time we were there several years ago. It was the Capitol Hill was barricaded big time. I mean, you couldn't even get to the steps to Capitol Hill. That was, I think, shortly after 9/11.
Yeah,
and you couldn't even get close. Couldn't even get close to the White House, really. which the last time we were there, you could get a lot closer. But
yeah,
both those places were kind of barricaded off. But I think they're places that you have to see. And right in front of the White House, and where a lot of these places are, is the National Mall. And I know that you wanted to talk a little bit about the National Mall, which is another place that you will see, but I think it's a must-see.
Yeah, so Washington, D.C. is great because everything is pretty compact, but you can, from the National Mall, frick, we're going to have to cut that out. Anyway.
No, we are not. Keep going. From the National Mall, what?
Yeah, so it includes basically everything from, well, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves.
No, you can talk about it. It's from Lincoln Memorial.
Lincoln Memorial. Yep. It's got different other war memorials, and we'll get into those in a minute. It's got the Washington Monument, which, by the way, you can go up in top of the Washington Monument. So the White House and Capitol Hill, if you're going to do that, you need to get your tickets ahead of time, like way ahead of time, submit your information. Obviously, they're going to have to do some kind of checks on you. You would never pass, for sure. But if you want to do it, then you could submit that information to kind of get cleared to take those tours.
So I guess we should let people know what the National Mall actually is. Yeah. It's not like the National Mall where you're going to buy jeans,
you go shopping there,
right?
No. Oh, okay.
It is a giant park. Exactly. It's a giant park that is right in the middle of D.C., and kind of all of these memorials kind of surround it. Several of them are at one end. Lincoln Memorial's at one side, and it goes all the way down. It's a big part that goes all the way down to Capitol Hill. And you see folks running through the park, and they have all kinds of events there at the actual National Mall. So it's just a huge park with lots of memorials in it. But I think that you want to see it right in the middle of it is the Washington Monument that you just talked about a second ago.
Get your tickets early if you want to go there.
I haven't been up in it, but just seeing the monument is really cool because you can stand at the bottom of it and just look straight up, and it feels like it goes on forever.
It really does.
Yeah. And it was a shame that it was destroyed in National Treasure. Was it National Treasure that was destroyed in, or was it Independence Day?
You love talking about random movies. I'm just glad you're not talking about Daredevil Corner or whatever you talked about when we talked about New York, and I had no idea.
Anyway, so let's talk about the Lincoln Memorial, which, by the way, Lincoln Memorial is, I think it's number one on TripAdvisor. Yep, Lincoln Memorial is number one on TripAdvisor, and it's also my number one, too. I thought that was my favorite thing that I saw there. That statue of Lincoln is huge, and the little gift shop that they have there with all the little trinkets that you can buy with Lincoln on them. I love Lincoln.
Yeah.
He and FDR are my two favorite presidents, and I'll talk about FDR later.
Yeah, it's interesting because you see it on TV, and it really doesn't look that big, and even when you're there, I guess, kind of in the National Mall area, it still doesn't really look that big, and then you get closer, and he's huge. It's really cool.
Yep. And then we've already talked about the Washington Monument, and you want to talk a little bit about the Jefferson Memorial. I've been there several times, and I have never been to the Jefferson Memorial.
Well, that's why I wanted to talk about it, actually, because it's one of those places that seems like it's a little bit further off, I guess, because it probably is. Yeah. But it offers pretty great views, too, so I would suggest going to see that. Of just the National Mall area,
So it's kind of around the way, like it's right across the street from the river side, and you from there is it up on a hill? I don't remember it being up on a hill.
Not much. I think it's relatively flat ground.
So tell me what you mean by great views.
Well, you can just see a different angle of everything, whereas the National Mall, everything is just straight on. You look around and you see everything. This is from a kind of a side view, more or less, that you can see all the other monuments and the other stuff in the National Mall area. And again, I think it's not as crowded because it does seem like it's a little bit further off. And then plus, all those areas, you got the cherry blossoms. I don't know if you had any desire to talk about those at all, but you got the cherry blossoms, which...
Yes, I had a real desire to talk about cherry blossoms. Please continue.
Which are trees that bloom. They bloom, basically for their bloom is out for, I don't know what it's called.
It's a flower?
Yeah, their flower is out. Yeah.
I feel like it's a flower.
The flower's out for like
your bloom
a week.
Is out. Hey, sorry, your bloom is out.
But people flock to go see that. I mean, it is a huge
flock to
deal.
the flowers.
Yes, yes. So it's a very, very important time, and I've been there kind of at the end of it when they were starting to wilt away a little bit. But it's beautiful. They're a beautiful tree. But it kind of lines different areas of D.C., especially where the Jefferson Memorial
Well,
is.
I've been there several times, and obviously they did not make an impression on me.
Probably because they're only there for 7 days, and they were not there when you were.
I thought you said they bloomed all the time.
No, they bloom for like 7 days a year. I mean, they bloom and they're bloomed, or whatever you call it, in bloom.
Flowers, yeah.
Yeah, blooming.
Okay, yeah, okay, yeah.
For 7 days.
So, and other than that, they're just trees.
They're beautiful trees. Stop talking.
Right,
it's just like the Pantheon when we talked about Italy. You're talking about that stupid hole in the ceiling. These are trees. These are beautiful.
And one other must-see that I have is the Korean War Memorial. That's actually number 2 on TripAdvisor. And it is my number 2 thing there also. It was so I'm
copying TripAdvisor?
I'm right in line with TripAdvisor on number 1 and number 2. It's a super cool memorial where it's got these life-size statues of these guys that look like they're walking through a Korean forest or something, and they're all placed just like they're actors from a scene of a movie. You've seen it, right?
Oh yeah,
it's a really cool memorial.
It is. It's very neat, and there's several memorials. Did you have anything else you wanted to say about that?
No, that was it.
Yeah.
For that
there's
one.
several memorials around that way involving different wars. There's a World War II memorial as well.
Yeah.
But those are very important to our history. I'll tell you one about the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. You've seen the wall, the Vietnam Wall,
which
the
is
memorial wall that has all the names written down on it.
Sounds like sacrilege, but it's boring to me.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well,
it's
thanks
just
for basically
a wall.
ruining the intro of my next story.
So
my
a bunch
dad,
of names on it.
My dad is a Vietnam vet, and
thank you for your service.
Thank
you for your
service.
service.
Not funny, you idiot.
I'm upset that I said something bad about the memorial.
You should be. You
not
jerk.
bad
You
about the
people
that served, but I'm not
Let me
the
tell my
only
story.
one. I'm not the only one that thinks that memorial is terrible.
You're an idiot. Let me tell my
made
story.
this wall, and then it was so bad that they had to commission somebody to do a statue at the end of the wall.
I cannot believe
there was uproar, and it's not just for me. There was uproar when they made this memorial.
Okay.
So go ahead with your story.
All right.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah,
not you.
My dad is a Vietnam vet, and I took him to D.C. probably 10 years ago, and he's not somebody who's very emotional, anything like that. So he was kind of in the thick of it when he was in Vietnam, and we went, and there's like books that you can look up people's names, and you can see where they're at on the wall, and you can find it. You'll see people kind of like tracing names. They'll take pieces of paper and kind of trace it with like crayons or something like that, just so they can have their name there from the wall. But my dad, he's sitting there trying to look up some of his friends that got killed literally right in front of him. He's hit with shrapnel and shrapnel, yes.
Okay.
Shrapnel from bombs going off,
right?
And grenades and different things. And so he's looking up these people's names, people that he served with and that were his friends, and he just lost it. I mean, he teared up and he started getting really, really, really upset, and he couldn't even look at it anymore. So he kind of had to walk off. And I just remember watching my dad kind of walk away, just
what a
basically
great uplifting story.
Sobbing.
Thank you. Oh,
and
I'm sure he's going to love you telling that story too.
But I say
your dad's
that
a tough guy. He doesn't want people to hear that he was sobbing at the war memorial,
because these monuments are our history, and looking at them is sometimes hard to understand exactly what they stand for or what they are. But kind of seeing my dad, it just shows you how important they are and what they mean to people and to our country. So anyway, that's kind of my story. Yeah.
All right. Great story. Let's move on. Anything else that you want to talk about in the must-sees?
Well, while we're talking about something kind of dreary here, you want to talk about
job. Yeah.
Arlington National Cemetery.
I predict right now that this podcast gets the least amount of repeat listens ever.
Listen, this is speaking from the heart, which I know you don't have. So I know you don't appreciate it, but Arlington National Cemetery, you've seen that in movies. It's got all the burial sites. When you're there looking at it, you can just see so far. I mean, all you can see is just grave sites as far as you can see.
I'm glad you mentioned Arlington, because it keeps intact our history of always naming something that's not in the city that we're talking about, because that is in Arlington, Virginia.
Okay, so while you're in Arlington, Virginia, which is literally like not even a half a mile across
but it's not
the
in the
street
city
from
we're
the
talking
National
about.
Mall, watch the changing of the guard at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. It's a nice spectacle to see.
Yeah, you're a spectacle to see.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some other things to do in D.C. So there are tons. Those were just our must-sees.
Yeah, quick hits.
Yeah. There's a joke here. Those are just our quick hits.
For 12-year-olds, there is.
Yeah. But let's talk about some of the other things to do while you're in D.C. If you're there for 1, maybe 2 days, you've got to see the things that we talked about. Other than Arlington, which I don't see why you would do that.
You definitely need to see that. What's wrong with you?
But there's tons of other things. If you're going to be there for a week, you probably need to see some of the Smithsonian museums.
Well, even if you're there for a day or two,
you
can
could
still see those
really
because
could.
they're right in the thick of it as well. I mean, they're right near the National Mall, right near the White House, right near the Capitol building, basically in between the Capitol building and the Washington Monument.
And so there are 19 Smithsonian museums.
Wow.
And total, 17 are in D.C.
Okay.
So there's 17 museums and galleries in D.C., and you've got your choice of things to look at and to see. Expect to spend some time if you go in one of those. We went in the Native American museum, Smithsonian Museum, and we probably spent half a day in there, and that we didn't see nearly all of it.
Yeah,
just a lot of information. There are other things to do. MLK Monument is there, and that's only been up for about the best.
Can I talk about the Smithsonian's for a second?
Oh, please do.
Jeez. Yeah,
please do.
So, let me tell you about some of the ones that I went to and I really enjoyed. I've been to a lot of them. I don't know that I've been to all 17 in D.C. area, but there's something for everyone in those, and you can kind of look up to see what you think would appeal to you the most. But there's an Air and Space Museum. There's a Museum of Natural History. It's got dinosaurs. Museum of American History. There's the Holocaust Museum, which we actually we haven't talked about, but that's another. We talk about kind of a important but yet depressing type thing. It is a great museum to go to, and
that's kind of like your commentary. Important but yet depressing.
Well, yeah. It's like your
Come
face.
on.
The American Sports Museum, you might like that one. National Gallery of Art, and then one of my favorite, the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. So you can watch them make money there.
Oh yeah, that sounds wonderful.
Yeah. So, okay, that's all I've got for.
Okay, good job, man.
Yeah, the Smithsonian's, but they're all pretty compact. You can see. I don't know what Troy's talking about. You don't have to spend a half a day at one, but you can tour.
What do you mean
for
compact?
An hour.
There's tons of stuff in there. You could spend all day in each Smithsonian.
No, I'm saying the Smithsonian's are compact because they're beside each other. A lot of them are beside each other. You can walk from one to the next.
Yes. Yeah, you can. So some other things to do. FDR Memorial. I really enjoyed that. And again, we could list maybe hundreds of memorials or monuments. You mentioned the World War II monument earlier.
I won't mention any more memorials because you cussed me because you thought they were too depressing.
Definitely did not. But there are
telling a story from my heart.
You can see the Ford Theater. So I know you like depressing things. That's where Lincoln was assassinated.
I like you, so yes.
But there are
actually, I don't really like you.
There really are just tons of things to do in D.C. We can't stress it enough. Is there anything else that you see that we need to talk about as far as other things to do?
Well, others, I talked about Arlington, and it's a little bit away. But
you talked about the cherry blossoms.
Yeah.
You talked about
Mount Vernon, the home of George Washington.
Is that in D.C.?
No, but it's close.
Of course
I
not.
said others.
Yeah.
God, you're such an idiot. So Pentagon, can we talk about the Pentagon at all?
That is in D.C.
Yeah.
My wife's been to the Pentagon like 5 times.
The Pentagon is further away than Arlington National Cemetery, which you just dog cussed me for a minute ago.
I don't know. Is the Pentagon in Virginia?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Well,
Langley.
Right. Yeah.
God, you're such. Do you ever watch any CIA movies?
Okay. So what else you want to talk about?
You want to talk about food? You got anything you want to talk about with food?
Well, I know you do.
Oh, I do.
And I always have something to talk about with food. So tons of great restaurants in D.C. Tons of great restaurants that cost a lot of money in D.C. Because the big players are there, and all these.
When you say players,
yeah, all of the people that govern our country are there, and
also players. I get it.
And people are exactly, and people want to buy them dinner, expensive dinners, so that they can get their favor on all the legislation. So there's lots of places that you can spend a lot of money at. A couple of places that we have eaten at. We ate at Georgia Brown's. Have you ever eaten there?
No.
Okay. It's kind of a jazzy Southern food.
Ooh.
Yeah. It was delicious.
What is jazzy Southern? Do they put jazz in their Southern food?
No, it's like a jazz club, but it's like a Louisiana Southern food.
Yeah, so you could say Southern food that plays jazz.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like Louisiana Bayou type, Creole or Cajun or whatever, mixed with Southern. It was good. And then another place that we ate at was Old Ebbitt Grill, which is pricey, but it's right near the White House, and that's a spot where you can see a lot of the folks sometimes that work in the White House head over there for lunch. It was actually built in 1856. It's got 4.5 stars on TripAdvisor. Dinner, it's pricey. Lunch, you can get lunch at a decent price. And again, we didn't eat anything that was bad when we were there. Capitol Grill is there, which is when you look on TripAdvisor, you're going to see a bunch of those little dollar signs because it's super pricey. But I think don't they have Capitol Grill other places? Is that the only place?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. And then we ate in I'm going to butcher this. The Mitsitam. Sounds exactly right. Native. Say that like you're a Native American. It was the Native Foods Cafe. Mitsitam. That sounded racist.
Yes, it did.
In the National Museum of
I'm
American
telling
Indian.
heartwarming stories over here, and you're being a racist.
And it was
awesome.
It was Native American food that had been passed down for generations, and it was all kind of interesting stuff. But that was a fun thing to do. Yeah. So what else you want to talk about for food?
Let me ask you about. I know we've talked about this plenty of times. Shake Shack.
Do they have a Shake Shack in D.C.?
They do. I think they have a couple actually, but they definitely have one.
I've got a different name for it that sounds like Shake Shack. Shake Shack is way overrated. So they have those in New York City. I know that they were thinking about getting one in Atlanta.
Yeah.
We got a couple friends that love the place.
I know.
On their urging, when I was in New York, I stood in line for an hour to get what was basically a burger and a shake that I could get from anywhere. Yeah, it's not worth it.
Yeah, people love it. I don't know why. You
By
and I
people,
both don't know
you
why.
mean two friends of ours.
There's other people that love it.
Well,
but yeah,
obviously by the lines.
Yeah, it's not for me. I mean, it's not bad, but yeah, it's not. My burger that I got there was actually undercooked, but so I want to talk about a couple other places. I mean, we've already hit a few, but there's a place called Medium Rare that was really, really good. Had a great steak there.
How was it cooked?
It was medium. We went to medium next door instead of medium rare. That wasn't really that funny, but whatever.
It was funny to us.
Okay, well, that's all that matters. Yeah. And then PJ Clark's. That's another good place that we've eaten there. I want to tell you another place that's right near the White House that if you can find it, it's pretty good. Woodward Table. It's kind of like what you mentioned earlier. It's like a Southern American. Didn't have jazz, but it's like Southern food.
It probably sucks.
Yeah, it's American food with a Southern twist, and it is good.
Yeah.
So you can try that, and then DBGB.
I don't know what you're even talking about now.
Yeah, it's a French Southern American fusion food. It's the best way to describe it.
It sounds like something you just pulled off TripAdvisor and you're reading.
No, not at all. Not at all. I've eaten at all these places.
Okay. All right. Well, is there anything that you want to talk about more about DC?
No, not really. I don't guess. I've went to, I'm a huge sports fan, so I've seen the Washington Redskins play there. That's the football team. I've seen the Washington Wizards. That's the basketball team. I actually saw North Carolina win the ACC championship there a few years ago. Yeah. and I've seen the baseball team, the Washington Nationals. The Nationals, even if you're not a baseball fan, it's a pretty cool venue because you can see the city a little bit from the stadium. So it's got a pretty cool skyline kind of in the background. But I think that's it as far as things that I wanted to talk about D.C. But, we kind of – are we in summary in yet or no?
We can in summary whenever you want to. Go ahead. Do your in summary.
My in summary is I love D.C. I think it's a great place. Everything is very simple, very compact, so it's an easy place to get around to.
I thought you were going to say very simple, very complex.
That's me.
Yeah.
But it's a easy place to get around, and there's so much to do. There's so much of our history there, so I would definitely recommend going there. It's a pretty cool city, and so that's kind of what I want to say about it.
Yeah, I agree. Tons of things to do in D.C.
I know.
We've spent 20 minutes or 30 minutes, whatever it is, talking about D.C., and we just really kind of scratched the surface. But these are the main things that I think you have to do when you're there. But there are tons of things to do. So I would urge everybody. That's one of those trips that I think everybody in this country should try to make it there at some point. And everybody outside of this country should bring their butts to this country and go look at that. Because, even though we've only been around for a couple hundred years, we are really proud of that couple hundred years. And the city's beautiful, and we love it. So, again, I think we both would agree it's definitely a place that you would definitely want to. Is it one of your top 5 cities?
It's in the U.S. It is definitely one of
in
my
the
top
U.S.
5 cities, and I don't want to do any. I want to make sure everybody knows. Just because we only talked about it in 30 minutes, gosh, we only scratched the surface. We tried to talk about so many of the things, but we literally could, just like you mentioned, talk about the Smithsonian's for hours,
and then people would be really bored.
Yeah.
So go find a Smithsonian you like and visit it, and go to the Washington Monument, Lincoln Memorial, go to the White House, go to Capitol Hill.
Where does it rank on your cities?
I would think that it's definitely in top 5.
Yeah.
It might be hovering around the 4 or 5 spot.
That's probably the same here.
Yeah.
Same here.
So I will end you. Or do you want to end us with...
I will end you.
I hope you do. I will end you. I will leave you. Leave them. Oh, boy.
What are you talking about? You just really botched this.
Yeah, well, you should do it.
Let me do this. Let me do this. All right. Our final summary closing statement is...
you haven't botched this at all.
I don't remember it.
Hey, it's better to go someplace
you hate
than to not go anywhere at all.
Oh my God, that was good. That was good. We made that sound good.
It's like I prompted you for every single word
of that. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook.
It's Why Would You Go There?
Hey, I'm still talking.
And then
get off of
follow us on Twitter at
Why Would You Go?
Because Twitter will not allow you to have
Twitter handle was too long.
Yeah, that's what she said. So Twitter, sometimes the handle's just too long.
Okay.
Hey, get up and do something. Go somewhere. Go see someplace.
Seriously, follow us. Ask us any questions you want on these things.
No. Ask on Twitter.
Yeah, ask on Twitter. I'll be happy to answer. Yeah. I post great pictures.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. Okay, we're out. Okay, they cannot all be home runs. Actually, they can't all be triples, doubles, or singles. Sometimes you strike out.